Okay, here we are. We have gathered together today to dig into the Sum of Four concept. Or should I say, the Sum of Four concept by Devon Keys.
Devon Keys.
Yes.
Who is that guy?
You. That's you.
Crazy.
Yeah. So you came up with this this idea. Of
Yeah,
the Sum
why
of
did you
Four.
come up with this?
Yeah.
What's the backstory here?
So some time ago when I had been doing cinematography studies, I had come upon the idea that that context in film changes your interpretation of it. And I came up with this idea that I thought was genius. I was like, 2 + 2. I thought I actually got the idea from somewhere else, and I tried to research everywhere, and I couldn't find this idea anywhere, not specifically called 2 + 2 at least. I know there was a really stupid short film called 2 + 2 = 5, which actually spawned this whole idea. But anyway, the logic goes, that two, you give 2, the audience gives 2, and you create 4. And then I started thinking, I guess you could do it actually different ways, like you give less, the audience gives more, and then it kind of just built up from there. So that's where I came up with the concept, and I've been sticking with it. And then I brought it over to you guys.
And it's been very valuable to us because we all come from pretty different areas on that map,
right,
in terms of how the films we are like driven to make and the films we like to watch.
Yeah, we all have pretty different perspectives on, and different kind of tastes for the films that we want to make. And taking this kind of concept that you came up with definitely helps kind of visualize our ways of all the different ways you can make a movie,
right,
and how you can do that for other people, I guess, for an audience.
An audience, yeah. It's funny because you and I, specifically you and I, have like clashed so much on this kind of idea where Kenny's usually in the middle.
Yeah.
Where we talk about like I feel like movies should be more designed, more intended, more and everything, and you're like, no, they should be more open, more interpretive, more expressionist, and for some reason we had this like clash where we're like, it's the same idea, one of us is right, when actually we're just kind of existing on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And one of it, we're on opposite ends is the thing.
Yeah. If you've seen many episodes of The Talkies, you may have come across this debate.
Right, quite a bit.
It's come alive several times.
Yeah.
And what I like about this concept is that it gives us a language now for explaining what makes a movie a certain way and why you may like it or not.
Right.
So how would you guys define yourselves on this scale?
I mean, I'm a 2 + 2. That's where I started. That's where I came up with. I'm definitely 2 + 2.
Mm. That's like where you like to reside.
Yeah, I like to have, because I think the more. It's kind of funny because I feel like the more the audience interprets, the more real and the more interesting it becomes for them, the more engaged they are. And it's funny because 2 + 2 isn't the most you can do. 0 + 4 is the most you can do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. For some reason, 2 + 2 hits the perfect balance for me. So.
Yeah, like right in the middle.
Yeah. So that's where I am.
Yeah, I definitely 1 + 3 is my favorite kind of movie, pretty much. I like making 1 + 3 stuff, but I actually lean also towards 0 + 4. Like I keep wanting to get to even more detailed. Like I want to split it into like fractions.
Yeah.
Where
Well,
it's
and obviously there is a spectrum, right? There's stuff in between.
Yeah.
Like Kenny is not so much a 3 + 1, but like between that and 2 + 2.
Yeah, I call myself a 1.
A 2.5, 1.5. That's what it was.
No other way. Well,
1.5.
which one comes first?
You give first, filmmaker first.
1.5, 2.5.
Oh, so you're more on the scale with Taylor. You're more on.
I lean a little closer to Taylor's side. Now that being said, I've kind of done everything. Not everything, but I've been all over the spectrum. I'm driven to do stuff, not all the way as far as Taylor, but I do like being more ambiguous. Than most. I think.
Yeah.
That being said, my most popular film I've ever made is almost a 4.0.
Right.
So
Well,
like
you
Nature
come from-
Kids, which is like a educational documentary,
Right.
right? So it's easily a 3-1, if not a 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
How does this help someone who's about to make a movie?
Yeah, I guess you could say like one of the things that I had always not liked in film school was this idea that people would say you have to learn the rules first and then you can break them.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, okay, then what good are the rules if you can break them, and why should it matter if you know them or not? And when I got more deeper into it, I did understand. Yeah, okay, if you know what the 180 is, then breaking it, you know what that does.
Yeah.
And so if that's your intent, then yeah, you can break that. I didn't get that when I was first learning. Is that you can break the rules if your intent is to break it and to create
have
that.
the effect of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, so the 2 + 2, or the whole concept of 4 thing, sum of 4, is that you could take this into a script. If you're writing the script, and decide to start making some changes along the way. So, for example, I have a scene in one of the scripts that I've been writing, where a girl walks into a room and sees what the room has become over the years, and she's been in this place, and what she sees is what the audience has to infer now information. When I first did the movie, I had been trying to figure out of ways of telling the audience exactly what's happened here, but now I've kind of stepped back and be like, okay, well, no, let's just show things, right? Let's make the audience kind of get it just by showing them stuff. And so that's one way you can do it, is just by just keeping it in your mind, and then as you're writing or as you're filming, as you're doing whatever it is that you do, just keep your changes along the way.
Yeah, it's not like an absolute rigid thing. It's definitely more of like a guideline, something to kind of think of in the back of your mind as you're making a film. So that way you kind of know what you're giving to an audience and know when and where to add little nuggets of information.
Exactly.
And how much information.
Exactly.
But it's got to stay true to whatever your vision might
Right.
be.
Well, I think that a film is always stronger when it is made with as much intent as possible, where someone, I'm not saying designs it, I'm saying knows what they want.
Yeah.
And so that being said, where are all the places we can place our intent when we're making the movie, right?
Right.
There's the intent of what's the story we're telling? What do we want it to look like? What is the tone? What is the length?
Yeah.
What is the genre? This is another layer of intent you can choose ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
You can decide, I want this to be a 1-3 or a 3-1 movie, and then
Right.
that will inform the way you do everything
It does.
throughout. And you end up, what's so great is you end up with what you wanted to end up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Taylor and I were just making the shot list for 5th and Main, and which is our film that we're shooting, all 3 of us.
Pretty soon.
And just yesterday we were talking about the shot list, and when that number came up, and it's because we were trying to draw out like an arc of emotion that we wanted to give, and then as we're making the shots, we're like, okay, well, maybe should the shot show this or should it show this? And then we had to go back further to the fundamentals and be like, okay, well, this is more of a 2 + 2, more of a 1-3, like between there. So that we'll probably have to do this instead,
Mm-hmm.
So it does inform your choices. So that is a good idea.
I think one could draw the conclusion, and we'll debate of whether or not this is true, but I think one could draw this idea that as the audience receives less information,
Yeah.
and more responsibility is left on them to infer, the smaller the audience becomes for your film.
I can see that, yeah.
That a 4-0 film has a big, wide general audience,
Yeah.
and that audience shrinks as we require more of them.
Well, this
Pretty
is
much,
interesting,
yeah.
actually. So I got a comment about this. I used to work for a magic company. Can you believe it? Like, things like that exist, magic companies.
Yeah, it was a company that made magic.
Yeah. There's a magical place.
It's at Hogwarts.
Yeah. So
it's in Hogsmeade.
Yeah, it's in Hogsmeade. We did advertising a lot in our video studio, and in one of these advertisements, there was a call to action at the end that we, the makers, the actual filmmakers, didn't really want to put in there. It was basically buy this for $24 a month or whatever it was, and we're like we don't need that, because the whole video was just about this is what you can experience every month, and look into it. Basically, the whole video was about it. Therefore, if anyone's interested, they're going to go and try to check it out. But the people who from higher up were like, no, put in the line, you can buy for $24 a month now, right at the end there. And I'm like, that just ruins the whole thing to me, because that's giving information when it's much stronger if the person just insinuates, I want this thing, and they go and get it themselves,
Yeah, well, there are definitely not many 1-3 commercials.
Actually,
most commercials are 4-0.
So this is really interesting, actually, because I was looking into that for the concept of 4 thing. Like, I was looking when I said 4-0, and I said most things are advertisements, right? And then I looked into advertisements to try to find one. Most of them are trying to get into an emotional, connection with the audience.
That's true.
So much that it's almost a 1-3. It's between 2-2 and 1-3.
That's true. Classic Coca-Cola commercials.
Yeah,
show a lovely happy scene, and then you see a person drinking Coca-Cola.
Yeah. The first thing.
Now the Diet Coke commersoals though are
then
I don't know, but they full on tell you to drink Coke.
They're like
to drink Diet Coke.
4.
Even then though, okay, you told me
3-1.
You told me about a subreddit called Coaxed into a Snafu.
Yeah.
Which is, can you explain what that means?
It's Coaxed into a Snafu is a subreddit where it just takes a meme joke template and devolves it into its absolute barest form. So like the concept of like being trolled, like getting trolled and trolling someone. You say,
so instead of
get trolled,
yeah,
it's you're coaxed into a snafu. Against your will.
So so the humor about that comes from, you already know the high level, and so when you break it down to the low level, you're passing like 2 forms of interest. Like you're like, oh, I already get that because it's connected to this, therefore haha, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's like meta humor is what it is. And the point I was trying to make with that is that I lost my connection.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm like,
right
how's he
now.
going to connect
I know,
it? How's he going to connect
connection. It's a good connection. This is my.
We were talking about Diet Coke.
Because of context?
Diet Coke. Okay, so because Diet Coke.
That was fast.
Yeah. So because Diet Coke does this thing of basically saying we're an advertisement and we're telling you what to do, people already know watching it that it's a Diet Coke commercial. They already know that Coke is going to tell them, you can do this, you can do that. So they've already built a judgment based on that. Like there's been commercials like from Kotex U tampons, where they talk about advertising, and the advertising itself is saying, what is this blue stuff, this blue liquid stuff, and they pour it on the tampon. What is that for? And that's the end of the commercial. It's like the commercial is obviously throwing shade at commercials itself, and because of that whole attitude, it connects with people emotionally. So again, it's 2 different levels of thing. So yeah. So even when it's a 4-0,
that is at least a 2-2.
Yeah. So even if it is a 4-0, it can go more.
What it really means is even commercials can exist on this spectrum.
On the spectrum,
yeah.
Right.
Back to the question as to audience size.
Yeah, size.
I think we could come up with a few examples of 1-3s that were commercial successes.
Yeah.
What comes to mind for you guys?
Like There Will Be Blood is almost a 1-3.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's closer to a 2-2, but it's like just underneath.
Fantasia. Yeah, that's a 1-3.
Yeah.
It actually wasn't commercially successful when it was in the theaters.
Really?
Oh no, it was considered a big flop.
Well, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, people called it Disney's greatest folly.
That makes a lot of sense.
They later said Disneyland was his greatest folly, so his follies are
Pretty good.
Pretty good follies, yeah.
Pretty good.
Paul Thomas Anderson in general is like one of the most popular, I would say.
Yeah.
Generally 1-3.
What about,
Close.
like,
He's like on edge.
Clockwork Orange.
That movie
Okay, see now Clockwork
is that
Orange
1-3?
and I would
That's what
say
I'm
so.
wondering.
Yeah.
And Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey, sure.
Like
Oh yeah.
But those are
Those-
only popular
2001.
because of who they're made by and how much.
I wouldn't say 2001 is popular by who, because Stanley Kubrick was not a massive name.
No,
when
but he
made
is now, is what I
2001.
mean.
Now, but 2001 was a big hit. It made a lot of money.
Oh, it did?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
This is fascinating to me.
Because of LSD, because they marketed it as the ultimate trip. That's what they called it.
Oh, because
and,
of LSD.
And it was in 1969, so everyone was on acid, and everyone would go and see it on acid.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
That's
then.
why it made so much money.
Okay, are there 1-3 movies that were commercial hits that did not benefit from drugs?
I can't think of any, man.
I mean, like, we had Mother come out this year.
That
Yeah.
wasn't like super successful.
And a few other the Aronofsky films, I'd say, are in that category of 1-3. His most straightforward film is probably Noah and the Wrestler.
Even Noah was like, it got into some of that 1-3 territory.
Yeah, yeah, it did. I don't know if any of his films would be called. I mean, they're profitable, so I mean, they're not like box office busters, but they're big, successful movies that people know
They
about.
are big.
So yeah.
They are big films.
My point is, you could be a big commercial filmmaker.
Certainly.
You could be a real Hollywood player as a 1-3 artist.
Right. No, certainly. Yeah.
and also
0-4 is another story altogether.
That's-
I don't think anyone has ever been popular
as a 0-4.
as a 0-4.
Probably not.
You're choosing a very lonely crowd to stand in as
Yeah.
a 0-4 artist.
Yeah.
I had something cool to say. Oh, well, the idea was commercial success as a 1-3
Yeah.
is also kind of relative, because you can have pretty small budgets that make their money back, but it's
Right.
not that they were even like hugely mainstream
Yeah.
and
Well,
popular.
even like the most money, like the top box office of all time movies. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about ratio, right?
Yeah, relatively.
Yeah. But if you look at just plain dollars, all of them are like ones that are 3.
Titanic is
Yeah.
like 3.1.
3.5.
Might as well. Yeah, might as well be.
Yeah.
Avatar also. Really,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And,
ones
yeah.
where they just kind of give everything.
Because yeah, I mean, Kenny is exactly right when you're saying you're catching a larger audience,
you are, yeah.
because not everybody wants to sit down and
Try to interpret.
try and interpret,
Right.
and
Yeah, and
figure
that's
stuff
what
out.
I think I mean.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
I've
also.
always hated when people say, "Oh, turn your brain off," right?
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, it's a good movie. Just turn off your brain and watch it."
Like, that's half the movie.
but this concept helps me actually give some credence to that idea.
Yeah.
That there literally are movies that require nothing of the audience, and therefore you may turn your brain off.
Like Slender
Yeah.
Man, for example.
Oh, geez.
Slender Man's not even
shouldn't
on the scale.
exist.
You can't. That movie
shouldn't
was
even
so
exist.
bad. I'm even embarrassed to tell people we saw that. It was so bad. Ugh.
There was something I wanted to talk about. I forgot what it was. My memory's great.
Good for you. This is why I really like short films. Because in the world of the short, you can actually experiment and do things like a 0-4 or a 1-3 movie, because there is no drive to make your money back.
Right.
Right?
Mhm. Right.
There's no drive to make sure you have a big enough audience for your piece. It can just be a piece.
Yeah.
So some of the best stuff you can find in those two categories are shorts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Because people let their guard down with those things. I was gonna say artists other than filmmakers, people who paint. or people who sculpt. Definitely.
Same concept applies.
Well, you know what's weird is because I think art has taken art in the classic sense, where we're talking about paintings and sculptures, museums, set pieces, stuff like that. Art in that sense has evolved differently than movies have, because movies have become such a capitalist type of business thing, where it's turned into Hollywood, and that's it's a big popular thing to make movies that make money. Art has gone almost the opposite direction, and we have people who like thrive on going to museums and like interpreting exactly what they think about a painting, right? So they'll go over to a painting and be like, oh yeah, I love how Matisse does the colors in here, and how they have the outline here, and he's really saying to me this, and he's saying to me that. And it's like it changes with every person who comes over, but they take pride in the fact that they can interpret. And it's like, people don't do that with movies,
No.
Yeah, not at all. People, I think actually of all mediums, experimental, abstract, 04 movies are probably the most not looked at. Like, people, there's really popular experimental music that's like crazy experimental and really popular,
right?
And then there's like Jackson Pollock is really popular, crazy abstract. But like the most popular experimental, like really experimental filmmaker was probably Stan Brakhage.
Yeah.
And like people don't know who that is.
Right. Right.
Yeah. No one knows who that is.
Right.
Yeah. I think we're so conditioned to experience a movie in a certain way, under certain parameters. We expect a certain payoff. We expect to put in a certain amount of effort. And for most people, I think a 04 is just too demanding.
Yeah. And that is
It's a challenge for me.
No.
I mean, there's some that I'm just like, can I really watch all these frames fly by of particles of nonsense for 8 minutes?
Yes.
Right.
I don't sometimes I can't.
Right.
You got to be in the mood for it.
That's the difference. Because you can look at a Jackson Pollock painting and look at it and it's
in
done.
1 second.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
done.
And walk away.
Yeah.
And then you walk away whenever you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can stay longer and really.
And you could also
it.
think,
Yeah.
I could put that on the wall in my house. It'll add some color. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter to me that it's not a landscape.
Yeah.
Right?
That's interesting. I wonder if time is part of it.
But how often
think
would you
so.
go back and watch Back and Forth?
Right.
That
Right?
one's crazy. Yeah, that's
Back
rough.
and forth is
I
nuts.
watched that from beginning to end
Yeah.
just this past week.
Yeah.
And when I watched it, my main thinking was, this was a really interesting idea. This is totally something I would have tried doing myself when I was like early 20s. I loved stuff like this. I like putting cameras on trains and put on my train tracks and seeing what kind of weird stuff I could do. And then it ended, and I was a human being who had seen Back and Forth. I don't think I'll ever watch it again.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it. I'll reference it, like I would any scientific study, an experiment.
Yes,
experimental
it
filmmaking.
is an experimental film.
But it's not something you consume.
No,
Like, it's not
different
about
from
consumption.
entertainment.
That's, I think, the difference.
It is, yeah.
What's interesting though is because that's all true about movies, and that is true that it's a huge barrier to entry because it's asking so much of an audience
Based on what you know.
Yeah, to have the patience and enough of an open mind. But what perplexes me is that this is talking about music now, is how, because music is over time also. Now there's these really crazy, abrasive, experimental music that is widely popular.
When you say widely popular, I don't know, because I haven't heard half the people you're talking about.
yeah. So widely popular. I mean, like getting millions of views on YouTube.
Right.
That's what I mean by popular.
Gotcha. Is Stan Brakhage that popular?
No,
Really?
not even.
Interesting.
He has like 100,000 views.
It's funny to me, we have seen this through our work in Short Film Roundup quite a bit, and I've seen it in many other places. At film festivals, I've seen it, and that's people who define themselves or their film as experimental when really it is not even close to beyond the 2.2 range.
Right.
Right?
They're probably comparing it to like Hollywood.
Like
movies.
maybe they just held on to shots for a long time
For a little longer.
or something like that.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, this is I really got artistic and experimental with this, and it's like, I think that territory, that 04 territory, is so out there and difficult to grasp for so many artists that just crossing the barrier past 2.2 is a big leap for most people.
Right.
We've had people submit us films where they said they're experimental, and we watched it and we went,
It's a straight narrative.
this is just a totally normal narrative movie. What are you talking about?
I knew what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I understood it.
Yeah, I know what happened. We even guessed the ending.
we guessed it. Yeah. What's funny is I was thinking about other 04 art forms that also are super popular, and one of them is Black MIDI.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a pretty popular one where you make digital piano music, but you make it across like
The entire keyboard.
all of the chords. Like you utilize all of the notes
At once?
almost sometimes.
You just use like a big rolling pin.
It looks
and boom,
Basically.
boom.
it's nuts sounding.
It's just like noise.
Yeah, it's almost noise. And then there's also this other, I can't remember what it's called. It's a really cool interactive thing where you try to make basically an interactive space, kind of like a video game, but it's not a game. It's just a space as small as you can make it on a computer hard drive, and still create a large enough world for you to just go out and fly around and experience. And that's like a thing. It's a very popular thing to do.
It's very weird.
Yeah. So
That is
it's odd.
interesting. I think about music though. I think people are more willing to experiment with music because it's in chunks, so you can listen to one 3-minute song and know if you want to go listen to a full album or not. And even like there is like harsh noise, like I showed you guys Merzbow that one time, where it's just static, just white noise the whole time. But there's even stuff a little less experimental that still has like some form of rhythm to it.
That's
And
why
I think
dubstep
that's
became such a big thing.
Yeah, that can keep you into it. But stuff like back and forth is not particularly engaging.
Right.
It might be kind of interesting to look at,
Right.
but it's something that you have to consciously stick with.
Right.
And
it's mentally like
it's taxing.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's a challenge.
In music, then that's your 04, whereas the 40 is the pop song that began that
The 40
that goes verse, chorus, verse,
Right.
with one instrumental bridge in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
And people like it because it's zero challenging. They know it. They're being rewarded with what they expect.
With what they know.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's why that audience that's where people are generally drawn, is because you're rewarded with what you're expecting,
Right.
as opposed to being caught off guard or surprised in any kind of way.
Okay, so here's an
People, as Clark Wolf once said, people don't like being had. They don't like being gotten or fooled.
So here's an interesting thing then. So what's like an art form that each of us are not particularly interested in or know very well? For Kenny, I would say probably video games.
Video games, yeah.
So like you playing a game like Passage would probably not be very good because you literally just walk straight. but there's so much more to the game than that.
It's for me. It's novels.
Novels.
I don't read novels. I don't really read very much. That's
what
something
about-
I want to read more.
What about prose then? Have you ever
prose?
Yeah, have you ever read like a big prose poem?
No.
See, now that's like taxing for me.
Yeah.
Like to get through like 5 sentences, I'm like, I'm done.
Oh, I actually love that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So like for me, I guess.
Like Keats is my favorite. Go read some Keats.
For me, I guess sculpture is one of them. Or I just don't get it.
Stuff like modern art sculptures, like
Modern
where it's
sculpture.
like a piece of steel is just like there.
Yeah, exactly. There's this piece at the Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento that is a big, shiny purple sculpture, and it has a spiral, it has a spike, and it has some really weird fluid-looking things. It looks just really odd. Looks like you messed around in a 3D program. And I went and read the thing because I looked at it. I'm like, okay. And I went and read the description, and it says, this is sculpture by blah, blah, blah. It's so genius because of blah, blah, blah. Imagine how it would flow. Imagine how it would feel. Imagine how it would taste. Imagine all these things. And I'm like, that's not my brain. I don't work like that. Mm-hmm. I can't look at a sculpture and think, yeah, what would happen if I grabbed it and I don't know, poked my head with it or something like that. That's not something I think about.
What would it taste like?
What would it taste like, right?
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it makes me think of experimental food.
I guess another part of it is that the sort of passive journey that takes place in popular movies, this idea of escapism, and really in a 1:3 and 0:4 film, it isn't offering any kind of escape so much.
Right.
It said it grounds you more to the here and now.
Yeah.
Than
because it's familiar when you're escaping, right? Just familiar enough to where you recognize it, but away enough to where you can get away from the real world.
Also, experimental film isn't about story whatsoever, too.
Right.
It's more about the literal form of moving images and maybe sometimes sound.
Yeah.
And it's about that alone for the most part.
Whereas noise music, like you talked about, isn't about form.
Yeah.
It's not about, beats.
Yeah.
It's about noise. Sound.
Yeah, it's about sound.
Yeah.
Specifically. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting.
So anyway, I think we've sort of tread all over this topic.
Yeah.
I don't know, do either of you have any more to add?
Not particularly.
No. Yeah, I would say to try to use this concept to try to challenge yourself more. Try to see if you can identify different films that fit within the spectrum, and then identify yourself as a filmmaker where you are in the spectrum, and then use it to try and challenge yourself with the different types of films that you make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a good way to broaden your own perspective on films. If you want to be a good filmmaker, it's good to learn how to appreciate all the work that's out there.
Yeah. And
a great way to experience stuff that may be hard, to appreciate stuff that may be hard to appreciate, might be just to take note that, this filmmaker, it isn't that they did anything wrong. They actually are just requiring more of me.
Right.
Now I'll step up to the plate and see what we can do here.
I do want to say one more thing about experience, and that's there was a video I had watched some time ago about game design, and this meets into someone who also can design films, because script writing and formulating anything of a movie is a kind of design experience. So in this thing about design, the people said, how does one become a good game designer? And they said, you need to do everything. Everything in life. You need to do it all. Mm-hmm. Experience as much as possible so that you understand different perspectives, and then now you can pick one of those perspectives and put them in whatever design sequence that you're trying to do. So if you're trying to make a movie, the best way to make the movie better is to experience all different kinds. That way you have that tool set within your brain, and you understand what some people like, what some people don't like, and what we experience as a whole.
Or even what you like.
Or even what you
discover
like.
Something new that you didn't know that you would like.
Exactly.
And then use that new knowledge to decide with intent what kind of movie you're going to make.
Yep.
And if you do that, you will make a better movie.
We should make a show called that.
That's a good line to end it on.
You did it, yeah.
Yeah.
You did it.
There it is.
I saw you coming into there for a landing.
Yup, landed that plane like a 747. Know what I'm saying?
This really has been Make Better Movies. We truly are now making better movies.
That's why it now must be Make Better Movies.
It can't be. Can it be Make Better Movies? Make Better Movies 2.
This summer. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, we're done. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.